Tom Barclay from The Sun, EFL expert, has come to join us here at Oddschecker, and we're going to talk through the Championship, League One and League Two, looking for some value in the markets that you can all find on Oddschecker at oddschecker.com. Starting with the Championship, and no surprise to see a relegated team at the head of the market in Stoke City, who are the 11-2 favourites. Underneath them, you've got Middlesbrough, West Brom, Nottingham Forest, Leeds, Villa, Derby. It looks like quite a strong Championship table. Who do you see being the dominant forces? Who do you think could be a bet to go up?
Yeah, I think it's a bit unlike sort of recent years. We've had Newcastle being overwhelming favourites. I think there's quite a big group of teams that you could pick from, but I think you have to go for Stoke as definitely being in the mix for automatic promotion. I know Gary Rowett's never actually won a promotion, but generally he's overachieved with most of the clubs.
You can almost claim that Burton one, can't
you? Yeah. I mean Burton exactly, and then you look at Birmingham. I mean, you only have to see what's happened since, but. Actually look at the Birmingham squad now on paper, and the players look actually better than when he was at the club. But with Stoke, you just look at some of the signings they've made. Benicophobe should be guaranteed goals in this division. Tom Ince is one of those weird players who doesn't seem to be good enough for the Premier League, but is so good at the Championship if you play him in the right way. Joe Allen, obviously, signing him on to a new contract could be absolutely pivotal, and I think it's hard to look beyond them. After that, it's interesting. Quite a few of these clubs are slightly rolling the dice with some of their managerial choices or some of the players they've picked. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Darren Moore did an unbelievable job beyond the end of last season. He even almost kept them up. I mean, never was going to happen. I remember when Southampton got the result at Swansea, and that was it. But the results at Man United, and I think did he get a draw against Liverpool? It's incredible. But there is such a thing, it's cliche, but as a new manager bounce, that was the ultimate example of it.
Got a job as well.
We got to see, now he's had a transfer window, what's going to happen now. He's brought in Carl Bartley, I think, from Swansea.
And Sam Johnston as well.
Sam Johnston, I'm a really big fan of. Thought he was fantastic last season for Villa. It's a big loss for Villa. Carl Bartley was very good for Leeds the year before. Not quite sure where he's at now, but it's still, based on his Leeds form, was fantastic. And if they can go and sign Dwight Gale as well, I mean, that's guaranteed goals. Either way, if they can keep Rondon, it looks like that might happen. They're going to be in the mix, but it's just the fact that Darren Moore, long term, we'll wait to see, when the chips are down. It was a free hit to a certain extent, although he absolutely smashed it out of the park. But yeah, with them, I think after that, if you're looking for something that's pretty likely, is Middlesbrough. Tony Pulis, not everyone's favourite style of football. And when you looked at him when he came in last season, probably didn't quite have the impact that we would have expected. But he's had his time to work with the team now. He's clearly got he already had a great squad to work with, but he's brought in the likes of Aidan Flint, 6'5" or whatever.
How many goals is he going to score from
absolutely, as you say, I think as a first goal scorer, he's definitely a good shout. Paddy McNair as well is a very talented player, despite what's happened at Sunderland, and obviously a bit of a powerhouse, physicality again in midfield. So I think he's just slowly moulding his Middlesbrough team that he wants, and the lack of clean sheets that we saw, surprisingly, when he came in, because you kind of expected him to have more of a quicker impact. I think that'll happen this season, but you never know, I suppose, based on last season. It's not as much of a guarantee as we thought, but that's where I would be looking. So
we've got Stoke there are 2-1 for promotion. West Brom, as you mentioned, 3-1, and Middlesbrough also 3-1. I think Stoke and Middlesbrough are the two you are most keen on. Stoke are 11-2 to win the league, and Middlesbrough are 17-2. We're now going to have a look at the other end of the table. This is where people watching don't want to hear their team's names read out, and no surprise to see Rotherham and Bolton are the two kind of joint favourites, I guess, at 5-4 and 11-8 to get relegated. Ipswich 7-2, Reading 4-1, QPR 5-1, Hull 5-1. Every year I look at the bottom of the Championship and it looks like every team listed has a fair chance of going down. Where are you looking here for a bit of value?
For value, I'm tempted by QPR to a certain extent, just because they've obviously been hit with this mammoth financial fair play bill, which we knew was coming, but was still, I think, is a really good thing on a side point from the EFL to really. As much as QPR fans don't want to hear this, you need to have these kind of reasons not to break it, because so many clubs have done that, and you can see with the likes of Birmingham and maybe even Sheffield Wednesday, there's a bit of worry there, and you can see how they're not signing any players as a result, and QPR haven't done that for a while. Ian Holloway's gone. I think that was harsh, but knowing Ollie a little bit. Sometimes you don't know whether it was his own decision. I don't know. But Steve McClaren is someone who has a lot to prove, despite having managed England and managed so many different clubs, but it hasn't gone particularly well in the last few years. He's got this reputation as being a fantastic coach. Everyone who's worked with him always goes on about how much he's a fantastic coach. Almost a cliche now to say it. But actually, if he is that good on the training field, that could be the perfect appointment, because QPR aren't going to be buying many players. They've got a lot of good youngsters like Easy, lots of different players that could coming through that he needs to develop. So maybe that's not a bad shout. But overall, with the lack of investment, that could spur trouble. After that, I mean, Rotherham are an obvious shout. They're a bit like when you look at sort of Cardiff in the Premier League, signing sort of the best of the Championship, knowing that if they do go down, they'll put themselves in a better position. I see similarities when maybe not even the best of League One, but likes of Carl Vassell and Clark Robertson, both from Blackpool. They're signing players like that, and then after that, I'd be a little bit worried if I was Sheffield Wednesday, despite where they were a few years ago. Bolton, I mean, Phil Parkinson pulls off a miracle a lot of the time. Bear in mind their struggles financially. You know, someone like Erhan Öztürk is such a random signing for a Bolton.
Well, I think he's going to spend half the game just looking in the air.
It probably, because you know that. I mean, I'm trying to work out where he'll fit in, but maybe it's all going to work. And then your favourite team, Reading. I have to, you know, we go back to that season where you were quite critical of them. And I think to get to, was it 85 points? And the job they did on Fulham in that semi-final, like, you have to give credit to them. It can't just be luck.
I agree.
But having said that, last season they showed that perhaps they were performing slightly higher than they should have done. I think they performed a lot worse than they should have done last season, given their squad. And the signings that I've seen come in so far, it's a lot of English know-how, the likes of Sam Baldock. Mark Minotti scored a lot of goals for Coventry, but that's a big step up. But that would be my issue again. Is goals was something that they struggled to come by, and they've gambled in a way on a striker that was doing it in League Two, on a player Sam Baldock who really worked for Brighton, particularly in the Championship, sort of covering for anti-knockout, but he didn't score that many goals. He actually did pretty well for him, I thought, in that team goals wise. But I don't think you can rely on him being clinical. So Paul Clement. Yes, I don't think they'll go down, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the mix.
I mean, unsurprisingly, you won't be surprised to hear I am on them to get relegated. And my concern, as you mentioned, McNulty and Baldock could be very good signings for a team who create a lot of chances. I still don't really understand where the chances are going to be from. A lot of pressure on John Swift to create. He's the only person who can do that. I'm fully on board the Reading relegation bus again. Yeah, exactly. A couple of other ones you mentioned there. A bit of a sleeper, I guess. At a double figure price, Sheffield Wednesday are 12-1 to go down. So if you agree with Tom that they're in for another difficult season, a lot of rumours about FFP and not being able to bring players in.
They haven't brought in that many players. Some of the experience they've lost is obvious. Some of the sort of more first-team players have left. Josh Lahukai, who came in back around December when Carlos Carvajal left. There were some games where you thought they were pretty good, but overall I wasn't massively overwhelmed by his impact. He's had longer to work with them. He is quite a disciplinarian. Maybe that's what they need. It's an outside shout. You know, I wouldn't, if I was picking my three favourites, it wouldn't be them. But the same with Birmingham. You know, there's sort of talk today about Gary Monk. You know, not being particularly happy with their lack of business as well. It's just those kind of things can all sort of gather momentum and in a negative way, and can have a massive impact. So we'll see.
Sheffield Wednesday, maybe if you didn't want to back them to go down, they're even money to get relegated, which could be a good one. Even money to finish in the bottom half, which could be a good one for your Rackers maybe. Before we move on to League One, we're going to have a look at everyone's favourite anti-post market, and that is the top goalscorer market. Benica Fobe is 8-1 favourite, Lewis Graben 14-1, Jay Rodriguez 16-1, although suggestions he may be on his way out of West Brom. Matai Vidra 16-1, Patrick Bamford just gone to Leeds is 20-1. What are you looking at here? Who do you fancy to score a hatful?
I'm not sure I'd hang my hat on any of them every year. Like, you think of Matthew Vidra won it last year, but his goal scoring record before then was pretty poor. But the team was so built around him, and he got a lot of confidence. But you know, there was already talk of Derby wanting to let him go. Probably won't happen now because of his wage demands. But does suggest to me that he's not like central to Frank Lampard's plans. So I'm not sure about him. Patrick Bamford had that great season quite a few years ago, but he's not exactly prolific. The one I'd be looking at most is probably Benakofobe, because whilst he's not the most prolific in the Premier League, he generally he has the physicality to make himself chances. He'll have more in this division. He showed in glimpses from the opportunities he was afforded at Wolves, because there weren't that many, because they were doing so well, despite Bonatini not scoring that many goals. He didn't really change it up much. I think he's just got all the attributes to really kick on, and he's in a team now where he's going to be the main man, and Rowett will play to his strengths. Random outside bets, maybe, despite what I said about Mark Minotti.
Yeah.
Mo Issa, maybe?
I completely agree with you. I was about to say 100 to 1.
Really?
With William Hill, and I think
maybe just worth a punt maybe on that one, because I know obviously Gary Johnson was a big fan, but Lee Johnson's obviously signed him. But there's been a lot of buzz about him, and sometimes you do see those players that kind of come out of nowhere from non-league. I mean, there's so many famous examples over the last few years. I'm not saying he's going to go on to do a Jamie Vardy or an Ian Wright, but he's someone that. I'm intrigued to see. Has he got the physicality of the Championship? I don't know.
But I mean, the interesting thing about him is that he scored 25 goals last season, his first season in professional football, and he's going to a team in Bristol City where Bobby Reid had scored 11 career goals before his season last season. And I think Lee Johnson plays a style of football which will suit him. You've also got to think that Zizou is suspended for the first 6 games, which should mean that Issa gets his chance very early on. So just all aboard.
Two others. I think we might not have seen the guy who is going to win it come through yet. I think if Gale does sign for West Brom, I'd heavily fancy him. And then just an outside bet, when you're talking about Aston Villa, I mean, now things have changed slightly. It doesn't look like they do have to sell all their players like we thought before. But not that he's been prolific, but he showed glimpses last year. Keenan Davis could be someone to watch out for if he's given a lot more of a chance by Steve Bruce this season. We'll see.
The only other two I'm going to flag up as well, Graben, just because... you feel like he's going to be the focal point of this Forest team, and he managed to score 12 goals in 19 games for Sunderland, which I think anyone deserves credit for that at 14 to 1. And also Will Grigg at 66 to 1. He started very, very quickly in the Championship when they were last here a couple of years ago, and then the managerial changes, the Warren Joyce period, and it all slightly fell apart. But I think to judge that he can't score goals at this level based on that may be premature, and I think that Paul Cook will have this Wigan team pretty functional, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's right. Paul Cook definitely plays... you know how he's going to play, and it's to get the best out of the likes of Will Grigg. So not bad. Yeah, that's a fair shout.
Enough top goal scorer bets there to really keep you going for the rest of the season. Hopefully, we've picked a couple of winners as well in the promotion and relegation and winner markets. Now we're going to talk about League One, and at the top of League One there is a heavy favourite. Is it based on the size of the club? Is it based on their team? Is it based on their manager? Is it based on the takeover? Tom. Sunderland are 7-2 with black type standout. They are favourites to win League One. Do you think that's fair enough?
I just don't. I'm not sure there are any favourites in this division. I think Sunderland are it goes without saying, they're by far and away the biggest club in that division. Probably one of the biggest if they were back in the Championship. I mean, they're huge, but there are so many variables, so many things that we don't know. Yeah. But the new owners have done well so far in terms of PR, from a PR point of view. Like they do a lot of the fan podcasts, and they've obviously changed the seats and all that kind of thing. Yeah. They're getting the fans on side, but what really matters is how they'll play. Jack Ross is someone who comes with a big reputation. Lots of clubs were looking to him. I think he had an interview at Ipswich, and so maybe it's quite a coup for him. But again, he's someone who hasn't worked in English football before, so how's that going to go? And then the amount of ins and outs. I mean, obviously they had to make a lot of changes. Bear in mind, first of all, how the team had failed over the last couple of years, but how much money some of these players were on. So it is time for some fresh thinking. But how quick will that gel? I don't really see anyone out of the signings they've made who makes you go, whoa, they're going to absolutely tear up this league. They could definitely. I mean, it's a long season. It might, you think of like a Newcastle again, but not to make comparisons with Sunderland and Newcastle, but when they went down to the Championship under Rafa, they lost the first couple of games. With 46 games, you get time to turn it around. Blackburn last year had a slow start, didn't they? But still, I think when you just look at the squad, it doesn't. when you looked at the Blackburn squad or Newcastle squad in the Championship, you thought, well, this will turn it around. It's that good. Not quite sure I see the same thing when it comes to Sunderland. But it wouldn't surprise me if they were in the mix, but I just don't think they're a definite favourite.
I mean, it makes this a very interesting market then, if you're happy to not draw a line through, but happy to maybe swerve the short price favourite. Where are you looking elsewhere then for teams who could feasibly go up?
Well, let's just have a look at the ones that are. So just tell me through the ones that are heavily favoured.
Next up, we've got Barnsley, who not many incomings, but not many outgoings either.
Yeah.
17-2. Charlton a 14-1. Pompey 14-1. Peterborough 16s, Luton 16s, Scunthorpe 20s. It's an open market, really.
So looking at that, so if we start with Charlton, for example, again, Lee Bowyer had a pretty good impact back in the last season. He's brought in a bit more experience, but he's also lost the likes of McGuinness. Not that he was particularly crucial to the way he played, it was more under Carl Robinson. But again, it's someone who had a good impact, but long term, we're not sure. Portsmouth haven't done that much business. You would expect more with Kenny Jackett. He's very accomplished at this level, so they're not a bad shout. Peterborough, as always, changed their whole squad. And there are loads of really exciting signings coming in. But we said that about a lot of players that they've brought in before, and some come off, some don't, and whether they all gel as a team, difficult. Whereas maybe looking at someone like Burton, who weren't even on that list, for the sheer fact that they're always overlooked, always underestimated, and yes, they did get relegated last season, but they weren't far off in the end. They've kept largely a lot of their same squad. Nigel Clough is someone who's got bags of experience at all levels, but League One as well, having worked there with Burton before and Sheffield United, in a chairman in Ben Robinson who fully trusts him, who will not make any rash decisions, and nor will Nigel Clough, even if there are bad results for a while. And then you look at someone like Liam Boyce, who was very sadly injured at the start of last season for most of the season, and having watched a few of those games at the back end of last season when he was back fit, particularly the win against Bolton, I was at that match. Just the sheer impact, his energy, his way he held the ball up, creating chances. I fancy him to score quite a few goals if he can stay fit, and Burton to be not a bad shout. Burton
are 28-1 best price to win the league. Promotion, they are going to be a little bit shorter than that at 8-1. So yeah, you can see that as short as 5-1 elsewhere. So someone else agrees with you that they're too big in the trading rooms. Make sure, as ever, to check Oddschecker before having your bet, to make sure if you're backing them at 5s and 8s is available, then you should have used us. Again, now we're going to slide down the table and look at the relegation market. If you say Oxford, I'll be very upset. An interesting little fact for you, though, that no promoted team from League 2 has been relegated out of League 1 for the last 8 years.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. Doesn't surprise me.
But it surprises the market.
Well,
who have Accrington 13-8 favourites for the drop. Wickham 9-5, a lot shorter elsewhere. Both of those two. Gillingham 15-8. Walsall 2-1. AFC Wimbledon just over the 5-2 mark. If you can confidently say that you think that Accrington and Wickham are going to stay up, there has to be some decent value around.
Actually, I changed what I said a minute ago. It does surprise me. There's obviously 4 teams that go down every year, so that is quite a shocking statistic, isn't it? Really, Accrington aren't going to change their model that's been so successful in terms of they're not going to overspend. I mean, Andy Holt's been very vocal, and he's great on Twitter to sort of give insight into how it all works, particularly at that level. So they were punching above their weight, being in the top half probably of League 2, let alone running away and winning it. But it just shows how much you can do when you've got a good manager, canny investment. That word momentum, which not everyone likes. But yeah, there is an element of that, and they're hard to beat, weren't they? So they haven't done too much business so far, but I think they re-signed Sean McConville on a new contract. Big deal. They
still got Billy Key as well, which is
and Billy Key is a good shout. I think they lost the goalkeeper to Peterborough, that we'll see about that. But generally, the squad's pretty much the same, but they haven't added too much to it. But I don't know, a difference between League 2 and League 1, a lot of it can be down to those cliched things like team spirit and how much they get along and all that kind of stuff. So there's no reason not to think that wouldn't continue. And bear in mind, was it the season before last where they were around near the bottom at Christmas? So again, long season. Wickham, a very similar story, really.
Yeah.
But they seem to be persevering with the Dad's Army, like Notts County.
Squad. I mean, if you look down the list of their squad and the ages, it's absolutely unbelievable.
I know.
Most of them are older than Ainsworth.
I did an interview with Matt Bloomfield back end of the season. Just signed a 2-year contract. It's like 34. They're like 400 appearances. Yeah, so
fast pay.
Yeah, but I mean, it just works for them, doesn't it? And I wonder if AFC Wimbledon, looking back, Neil Ardley, I mean, they're still in the division, so maybe not, but Bayo Akinfenwa has clearly proved over the last couple of years to be an absolute massive in every sense of the word,
huge
asset for in League Two. And I don't really, based on what the evidence you've just given about the fact that no one has been relegated from it, there's not a huge difference clearly between the two. So he could go on and do pretty well. In terms of the ones that I think could be in trouble, again, like the bottom 14 of the Premier League, someone gets themselves in trouble and they could find themselves doing a West Brom, and it's a very similar kind of thing here. I do again look at AFC Wimbledon because a bit like Accrington, I think they've been punching above their weight. Neil Ardley's done a very good job. Goals were a problem last year. They did enough to stay up. They've gone for James Hansen, who perhaps is a similar player to Akinfenwa or Tom Elliott before then, which they maybe didn't have last year.
I think James Hansen in 2015 would be a great signing. But it's been, he went to Burnley on loan last season.
Bit of a gamble. So it depends whether he can sort of do that kind of physical side of things still, but I slightly worry about him. Walsall again changed the manager back end of last season. We talked about Ernhard Oztumer. I can't admit, Professor's watching them every week live, and sometimes you get those players that do seem to be just on the highlight reel. You think, wow, they're amazing, and maybe they don't do as much as you think in the game. But nonetheless, if you look at his stats, he did still score a lot of goals and wonder goals. So you do wonder if that will have an impact. And I don't really think Blackpool are going to go down because I think Gary Bowyer is such a solid manager. But it's always permanently in crisis. Generally, there always seems to be one decision away from it having a complete nightmare, and he has lost some key players in, as I said before, Robertson and Vassell to Rotherham, who were centre back and centre forward. So maybe a bit of room for manoeuvre there.
So as we said, they're the ones we're looking at, AFC Wimbledon, just a shade over 5-2, and you say you think Blackpool will just about be okay. Anyone kind of further? Do you think bigger prices down here? We're looking at the likes of Bristol Rovers at 15-2, Plymouth at 15-2. Obviously, we're bottom in November and then recovered to go up. Or do you think these guys should all be safe?
I don't really fear for them because I really rate the managers. I think Derek Adams is. I was kind of Paul Hurst was a great choice for Ipswich and really deserved it. But if it hadn't gone for him, I think he wouldn't have been a bad shout. He's not exactly. He's quite what's the word? He's quite straight faced. Doesn't really give that much away. But I think he's really proved himself at this level. Not only getting Plymouth up from League Two the year after they sort of lost. They lost in the playoff final. Lost a lot of their players. Basically to do the whole squad again. Took them up, and then as you say, last season took them from a real sort of serious situation into almost making the playoffs. So I think in him, over that course of time, when you look at him, particularly from a sort of betting point of view, I think he's proved a very, very safe pair of hands. Fine. I'd only worry if he moved on. And I think same can be said for Darryl Clark. I mean, he's I think these guys are working against. There's a reason why they're lower down in the odds because of the squads they have, perhaps, and the place. Even though I love Bristol, it's not a lot of players don't go down that way, particularly to Plymouth. Of course. But I think just based on their experience, I'd fancy them to be okay.
So looking at towards the favourites there, Walsall are the one team that I also think have a difficult season ahead of them. Dean Keats came in, a bit of a club legend as a player. Not sure he's quite cut out for the job as a manager, and it was pretty desperate at the back end of last season, and they've been struggling for a while now. So they're a team and they're 2-1 best price. They're a team I'm looking at maybe to get against next season. Top goal scorer now, and no surprise to see who's the favourite in the betting. Brett Pittman is 8-1 favourite. Charlie Wyke of Bradford, will he still be there next season? We don't know yet, but he is 12-1. Mm-hmm. Lyle Taylor, who's moved across from AFC Wimbledon to Charlton, 14-1. Danny Hilton, an absolute nuisance for Luton, 16-1. Jason Cummings, 16-1. Kiefer Moore and Tom Bradshaw, both set to start up front for Barnsley, you'd have thought, together, 16-1. John Marquis, 25-1. Liam Boyce, 25 to 1, who you've already mentioned.
Yeah, I quite fancy him for the reasons I mentioned. You look at someone like Kiefer Moore, he has, apart from that spell where he was on fire, he's never been particularly prolific. But if Barnsley can, but they have a very particular way of playing. Where did he leave from again? He left Rotherham. Rotherham. At that time, they had a very specific, and you could see because when Michael Smith came in, it was just basically exactly. And it wasn't like he was prolific before. No. So I'm not so sure. Unless they're going to play a very similar way, I would go for him. Jason, I wouldn't. Jason Cummings is someone who came down from Scotland with a lot of buzz around him. A lot of people thought he could really do things in England. Hasn't worked out so far at Forest, which he's obviously come down on loan from. They're obviously doing all their business. So it's not a surprise that he moved on loan. I still think it's quite a coup for Peterborough to get him. Whether he's physical enough for England, it's something maybe he's needed to work on. But if he is going to play every week, he might not be a bad shout. I mean, remember he did score, I think, against Newcastle in the League Cup.
Peterborough is such a hotbed for strikers and goals. You see so many people going there, not very prolific, and then playing
exactly. Marriott, big prime example, isn't he? And there are more than that. Pittman's a solid shout. How old is he now? Is he what's about 32?
Must be 32, maybe? Yeah.
But he's someone that has risen up the ranks and just nothing seems to faze him. Because every time he's one of those classic players where I'm sure people around him, not his close allies, but people were saying, well, you can't do this at this level. Now you can't do it at this level, and he's always proved them wrong. So there's no reason not to think that he would be a solid shout every week.
You can probably also give him 7 penalties now at the beginning of the season.
That's a key point, And then talking on key points, Billy Key as well is someone who's defied the odds, really. Someone who, as quite famously now, was very close to jacking it in altogether and working with his dad in construction, and went back to Accrington and rediscovered his love for the game. And in John Coleman and Andy Holt again, they seem to have a great relationship if you know him, but also from social media it's clear. He's again a player he's at the right club that gets the best out of him, and based on what we were saying before about the difference or the lack of difference between League Two and League One, there's no reason not to think he couldn't continue his scoring spree. Yeah,
and with Caden Jackson being linked to a move away, you can be sure that Billy Key will be starting up front. He's not going to be going anywhere. And if, like Tom and I, you do think that Accrington are going to be fine next season, then I think Key is a very, very smart move. And he is 35 to 1 with 188 bet. A few Goalscorer Markets. So I think that the Boyce at 25s, Billy Key at 35s, and Brett Pittman at 8 are probably the three we're looking at the most there. And Sunderland fans, we're not sure the title's quite yours yet, let's just say that. Moving on now to League Two. I'm here with Tom Barclay, who's come to Oddschecker to talk to us through the EFL card before it all gets underway on Friday. And at the top end of the League Two market, it's a bit of a three-way tie. We've got Notts County are 13 to 2, MK Dons are 7 to 1, and Lincoln at 8 to 1. Those three are clear in the market, ahead of Mansfield at 10s, Cobblers at 12s, Swindon are 18 to 1, as are Bury. Interesting here. Lincoln and Notts County both beaten playoff teams. MK Dons, a team coming down from League One, but I think you agree with me that maybe they should never have been relegated in the first place.
Yes, that would be my first point. I can't argue with much of that, to be fair. I think those three teams are in the mix, but I would probably have MK Dons as my most favourite of those three. But having said that, it's new manager. You don't know how it's going to work. Paul Tisdale's clearly a long-term kind of manager, but he seems very hungry to have made the move that maybe he definitely could have made and higher a long time ago. But in MK Dons, probably I think most people would agree, apart from MK Dons fans, probably the least fashionable club in the country because of their history. But if you go to Stadium MK, it is a wonderful stadium. They're clearly their facilities are great. Their academy, Dele Alli. I mean, they've got a lot of credibility when it comes to bring through players, and he's pinched quite a few players off Exeter. He's got a solid squad. It's not like it's changed completely. It just comes back to what you're saying. I think through mismanagement or poor choices, that's why they find themselves where they are. But maybe in the long term, it could be better. I mean, look, Robbie Nielsen was highly rated. It didn't work out. Turned to Dan Majiji, the man who helped bring through Dele Alli, and is known for his work at youth level. Didn't really work out either. No. But now with Paul Tisdale, someone who's got proven track record of bringing through players, all right, they haven't got promoted from League Two, but I think with Exeter, if you go down there, the difference between St James's Park and
he got a promotion like 8 years ago from League Two, so he has done it before.
Right, yes, okay. It's just in my in short term. I just remember him going to Wembley twice in the last couple of years and seeing it not go too well. But I think look, last year it didn't go well against Coventry in the final, but they'd lost some key players. Ollie Watkins, who could well be playing in the Premier League this time in a couple of weeks. Seriously, there's a lot of interest in him that shows how to sort of recover from losing those kind of key players. And there's more than that. David Wheeler, he's just got a record of doing well from losing a squad and changing it around quite quickly to doing well. So that would suggest to me that he could go in there and make a relatively quick impact at a team that should already be doing well. After that, I think Kevin Nolan's proven to be a solid manager. I know they kind of fell away a little bit towards the end, but is that really a surprise when you bear in mind some of the ages of that squad?
Yeah.
They're all played. Shola Amiobi's played in the Champions League. I mean, he did very well, but he's been released now 35. They had a lot of aging players, and maybe it wasn't a surprise that they tied, but he's replaced them with some very solid signings. Christian Dennis has gone to Notts County, just down the road from Chesterfield. Yeah. Exactly. So up front now they've got a bit more youth, players with proven goals in this division, so they should do well. And then Lincoln. A lot of people love the Cowleys. Anyone who's interviewed them, they're great company, and they've done amazingly well to get where they are. Their team is very physical. If anyone who was at the Checker Trade Trophy final,
it's almost like the antithesis of them. Like you see these like gentle, eloquent, like lovely guys, and you go and watch them, and you're like,
you're like,
expecting this.
Wow, exactly. I mean, Dean Henderson in the Checker Trade final, I'm not sure he was ready for that Matt Reed elbow.
I don't think anyone's ever ready for Matt Reed, really.
No, but having said that, it works for them. And it's not just that. There is more to the game than that, of course. And with the signing of John Akinde, who again is a very proven goal scorer if you get the best out of him, which Martin Allen was the expert at. You think he would slot into this sort of physical style of play very well. And all right, they lost Alex Woodyard. He was a good player as well, but they brought in quite some exciting players. Most importantly, they've kept the Cowley brothers, who had interest from all over the divisions. So I could see them. And they're a big club, Lincoln. They shouldn't, they should be fighting for promotion.
It's easy to forget that as well because their time spent in non-league. So just to reiterate, I think we're on board with the market here, but still some juice there. If you do think anything that Tom's just said is more interesting than anything else, Notts County 13-2 with Black Type, MK Don 7-1 with Spread X, and Lincoln are 8-1. A few firms there stand out at 8s.
One club just a random outside shout that I've just been intrigued by their business, and it could go either way, is Crawley. Harry Kewell was. So in Charlton seemed to be close to that Australian takeover. My understanding was it was very, very close. It still hasn't happened. That's another reason why Charlton, interested to see what happened there. But they were keen on Harry Kewell, so he's got a lot of stock, and I think he improved last season. And they've signed the likes of Romain Vincelot. They've lost a few key players as well. But Felipe Moraes, I mean, these
3-year deal at 32.
Yeah, it's a gamble, but still to drop down to League 2, that's what I'm saying. It could go either way. They've signed some sort of players approaching veteran territory, but also ones that you're like, I was looking and going, whoa, that was impressive, or at least it looks impressive. So could be one of those ones either way.
They're 66-1 to win the league, 10-1 to promotion. Crawley maybe an outside bet there if you're looking for one of those. Looking at the clubs around Crawley, because they're going to be one of the first ones we mentioned here in the relegation market due to the way that the market is shaping up. Morecambe, forever favourites for relegation. I think Jim Bentley absolutely loves proving people wrong. 7-2, they are joint with Yeovil to be the ones to go down. Just 2 relegation spots, of course, from League 2. Macclesfield, who've just been promoted and lost their manager straight away, are 4-1. Crawley 8-1. Forest Green 8-1. Cheltenham, who've lost Mo Issa, who we spoke about in the Championship video, 9-1. It's all fairly open here, and it almost seems like a bit of a guessing game beyond Morecambe and Yeovil.
Yeah, I mean, I think those two, there's a reason why they're both there. But as you say, Morecambe are always favourites, and they've upset the uppercut every year, haven't they? But at some point, you feel like it may catch up with them. But I suppose, is there any particular reason why to think this year will be any different? I don't know. Yeovil, similar situation, and the one sort of aspect of their squad that makes me worry is Otis Khan's left for Mansfield, someone who is a creative player, but he delivers at this level. If you look at his stats, scored loads of goals, lots of assists. Take that out of your team, and it's gonna have an impact. So to be able to turn that around, Yeovil, similar situation to Plymouth, trying to attract players down there. As lovely as it is, anyone wants to go down. That part of the world is great, but players don't often think that way. That could be tricky for them. Those, to be honest, those would be the two that I'd be mainly looking at, but.
I mean, I wanted to ask you about one team who came that we saw Chesterfield had back-to-back relegations last season into the conference, and Oldham are a team who have been cut. I think they were 25-1 with Bet365 just 10 days ago. They're now 8-1 for relegation. I think there's been a lot of murmurings about maybe how the club's being run, maybe their recruitment strategy. 16-1 is still available. Do you have anything about how they went down last season?
Well, they seem to be sort of self-inflicted. Signing players from. It was Oldham who signed players from all over,
no one knows where,
from everywhere, and a lot of them, and that can sometimes work, but more often than not, it doesn't. I mean, Oxford.
I think it works.
Prime example,
exactly. I think it works when you know what you're doing, and if you don't, then it can.
And also when you're doing that, often you need the manager to stay in place the whole time. It's a project because you've got these players who are coming over from overseas who need time to adapt, and to have lots of change in the dugout makes it harder to do that. 1 week they're being told one thing, they're in the team, they're not in the team, and it's not surprised that happened. I think they're turning to more British-based players.
Yeah, they've got a lot of players who are still there. I think they've got about 16 overseas players. And Frankie Bunn's come in as manager. I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, so that's it's another a rookie manager putting their faith in that is a gamble, but Stuart Day is the chairman, and he's someone that when you speak to people in the game to talk about how passionate he is, it's not like he doesn't care. And there are some owners that have historically haven't cared, so that is a key factor, but he's got to get it right soon. And I can see why you're looking at it thinking, when you look at what happened to Leyton Orient a few years ago, that when you get on these downward trajectories and you have problems like they have had, and with someone who hasn't had the most experience being the number one, it's again a gamble, it's a risk.
Yeah, that's where I'm hanging my hat, because I think that Morecambe will probably yet again manage to stay up. 16-1 they are with Black Type and with Unibet. Finally, we are just going to have a quick look at the top goalscorer market. The aforementioned John Akinde heads it at 10-1 with Christian Dennis, we've also briefly spoken about, of Notts County at 10 as well. Kieran Agard, who's not scored as many goals as I think people would hope he has at MK Dons, is 14-1. Kane Hemming 16-1. Christian Deutsch had a fantastic season last time, even though Forest Green didn't, is 20-1. Craig Davis at 20-1 as well. Anyone there catching your eye? Yeah,
I think there's a reason why most of them are there. Akinde should suit this style of play, and if he stays fit, which is obviously it goes for all of them, but I mean his injury record of late hasn't been fantastic, but if he does, you'd fancy him. Again, Christian Dennis is someone in a very poor team. Often at this level, when you get players who are scoring goals in poor teams, that always is a good indicator of someone who's going to do well. Christian Deutsch, you can see why you're going for him. Jaden Stockley's not a bad shout. If he's still with Exeter, that'd be that's the thing about Deutsch as well, isn't it? Yeah. Bristol Rovers seem to be circling. Yes, that wouldn't surprise me. Having lost Ellis Harrison, they do need a striker. Then you think Forest Green can probably maybe rebuff offers more than other teams at that level? Yeah, well, they did start last season. They had some decent money offered before they even started the league. So there's no particular reason why that should have changed now, based on Dale Vince's big ambitions for the club. I'd be more concerned about Jaden Stockley. Okay. I think someone like him. But having said that, having interviewed Jaden, he loves that part of the world. Having said all the things about other players, because he was there before, he went off to other places. I think he went to Scotland, didn't quite play that much. And he's very happy there, so it would take it'd take the right move to make that happen. Back to Kieran Agard. Yeah, I just don't think he's a very good player at that level. I don't know if he's the most prolific. Yeah, I agree. So be looking more at the likes of Akinde, Dennis, and Deutsch if he stays. The one player I just wanted to point out as well would be Danny Newton, who I think
was Stevenage top scorer last season as well. I mean, they've now lost Godden, so you think that even more goals available to him.
He's going to have to step up, isn't he? Yeah, and he impressed last year, definitely. And then looking at Tyler Walker as well on loan at, is it Mansfield that he's gone to? I mean, he's someone who's in fits and starts showed his ability. So if he's given a run out on a regular basis, gets a bit of confidence, then probably not the first pick, but maybe as an outside pick.
Well, yeah, the outsider that I was going to mention there is the evergreen, or Mark Richards at 66 to 1, who probably looks set to still be Swindon's first choice striker at 36 years old. So if they have a good season, it could be him. But if you had to put your 10p on one of them at the top, I'm going to push you here just because we're finishing. Who would it be?
Johnny Kinde.
Johnny Kinde at 10 to 1. Hopefully a few winners there, definitely a few bets. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Tom Barclay. I've been George Elek for Oddschecker, previewing the EFL season ahead of us.